The City of Riverbank Regular City Council and Local Redevelopment Authority meeting is now in session. Today is Tuesday, February 23rd, 2016. The time is 6 p.m. Please stand. Bradley, would you come up front here and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No, the audience, we're going to have invocation here in a second. Good job.
Let us pray. Thank you, Heavenly Father Jesus, for this your day, the day that you've provided for us to give you praise and thanksgiving. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for the many blessings that you have bestowed upon each one of us. We thank you for this great city, for the staff, for this council, for our mayor, Heavenly Father Jesus. We just ask that you bless him. Just give him an extraordinary blessing with health. Just give him a revitalization of everything. We know, Heavenly Father Jesus, that you tell us we have not because we ask not. And we're asking you tonight just for your blessing upon us. We need your blessing. We know, Heavenly Father, if you're looking down upon us, things today are much worse than they were when you walked upon this earth. But you tell us, Heavenly Father Jesus, that we can depend upon you. We can put our trust, our faith in you. We can expect you to be our provider and provide for us. And we thank you for that. Be with this great nation that you've given us. Be with our leaders wherever they're at. Be with our servicemen, each mother's daughter, each father's son, wherever they're at today. Lift them up, Heavenly Father. Walk with them. We'll give you the praise and thanks for it all. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Council Authority Member Leanne Jones-Cruz is on an excused absence. Council Authority Member Cal Campbell.
Here.
Council Authority Member Darlene Barber Martinez.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chair Janine Tucker.
Here.
Mayor Chair Richard D. O'Brien.
Here. Conflict of interest. Any council or authority member or staff who has a direct conflict of interest on any scheduled agenda item to be considered is to declare their conflict at this time. Seeing no conflicts, we're going to start with presentations. And before we go to item 1.1, we have a 0.0 to come on up. And I would like to have Ryan, would you come on up, please? Let's go to there you go, podium. Okay, these are the future leaders of our country, our city, state, and hopefully the messes that we leave you, you'll be able to clean up. But what I would like to do is to recognize Boy Scout Troop number 40. On behalf of the City Council, I hereby formally acknowledge Boy Scout Troop 40 for their dedication and service you provide to the City of Riverbank. Signed this day, Richard D. O'Brien. And I want to thank you and all of what your troop does, what they do throughout the city, and your participations. Okay? Thank you very much. You want to say anything? You don't have to.
No.
Okay, thank you. Item 1.1, presentation by StanCog regarding the proposed expenditure plan adopted by the StanCog Board of Directors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council and staff. I thank you for the opportunity to be before you to speak regarding the 2016 expenditure plan. For those of you, I'll give you a little background. Who is StanCog? StanCog is a policy board that is represented by members of each of the jurisdictions for this region. And thank you, Mayor O'Brien, for your leadership on this board. We also have the 5 county board of supervisors on our board of directors. So as you can see, there's 16 board members. The Stanislaus Council of Governments, it's the metropolitan planning organization for the region. There's 18 metropolitan planning organizations in the state of California, and STANCOG is one of them. The STANCOG is responsible for the long-range planning plan of the region, and what that means is we are planning for the future on our transportation infrastructure projects. So we work closely with each of the member agencies and with the staff of each of the jurisdictions. STANCOG relies heavily with state and federal dollars to make some of these projects happen. We are, as you see on the slide, we're involved with infrastructures for street and roads, air quality, conformity, the goods movement, bicycle and pedestrians, and our public transit. STANCOG, as I mentioned, it talks about the transportation expenditure plan that the board has been discussing in the past few, probably a year and a half. And we've been looking back as to what this region has done. In 2006 and 2008, 2 efforts were conducted to pass a half-cent sales tax for the region. The board has taken a very close look at what had been done in the past and how we can do to improve and move forward with considering a half-cent sales tax for the November ballot. A comprehensive outreach program has been conducted. We've hired a consultant that has helped us be in the communities of this region and really look at what would be the most public support for us to become self-help. Meetings, over 40 plus community presentations have been done. Focus groups on each of the communities have been done and will continue to be done to make sure that we have the public support. Specific programs and projects have been identified as to what that would be supported. The board has begun a framework of the expenditure plan that I will explain in a moment, which unanimous support not only by our policy board, but also by our advisory committees, which we are happy to say that Jill Anderson sits in one of the committees with the management and finance. And there has been unanimous support even on that when the framework was being developed. The expenditure plan has these categories. 50% of the expenditure plan would go to the local street and roads. And this is information that we've received not only by a polling that was done passed in October, but also by that community outreach that I've mentioned that has been done extensively throughout the region. Also, 5% would go to the bicycle and pedestrian projects. Traffic management would receive 10%. And 28% to the regional projects, and 7% to other. And other is, going back to the 50% of the local street and roads, it would nearly bring about $480 million in the 25-year, about $19.2 million per year. The regional projects would be a collection of revenue of $268 million for the 25 years, or $10.7 million per year. Projects for this regional project have not really been identified. That is something that staff will be working closely with the jurisdictions to discuss those. The traffic management, this is local. This would be $96 million for the 25 years, or $3.8 million for the on an annual basis that each local agency would receive from this category. The bicycle and pedestrian is also a 5%. That's nearly $48 million for the 25-year, or $1.9 million that would come locally to this region, or to this jurisdiction. 7% is divided in 4 categories, and I will discuss each one. Point-to-point service is something that we've heard very loud and clear in this jurisdiction and also in Oakdale about providing services to seniors or people with disabilities. So this is a specialized, it's not the same as transit or the dial-a-ride. This is the specialized door-through-door service. Currently, we have a program with MOVE that provides that service through the Bridges program. But this would be one of the programs. The other is Community Connections. This is for identified in areas that do not have sidewalks in our unincorporated areas of the county. Transit improvements, this is for transit, for the improvement of transit wherever is necessary. Transit right now that we have currently, we have 4 operators, and a lot of them are restricted with the fare box, so that is a concern. Rail-related is, for rail-related projects, it could be shuttled for BART, shuttles for ACE train, or even our San Joaquin corridor that is going to be expanding some service. So for the Amtrak station, this could be potential services for those programs. Our timeline, and the reason that I am here before you, is to provide you this information regarding the half-cent sales tax, but also to provide you with the information and what we're going to be continuing to do in the next few months. For the March and through May, we're going to be out in the communities continuing to do our education program and finalize the project list. That project list, staff will be working with your staff to come about with what are the priority of the projects. What priorities do you want to see in the next 5 years of your projects? As you see in the expenditure plan, 65% will come locally here to you. In June, we'll be presenting the final project list to our board, to the Stangtalk board, and finalize the ballot language that would potentially go into for the November ballot. But in July, we'll be requesting the Board of Supervisors to place the measure on the November ballot, and August, November, a private or political action committee will be doing their own campaigning regarding support of this expenditure plan. The regional and city benefits for a tax measure, it would help to improve our road infrastructure. We would not have to rely, as I mentioned earlier, STANCOG currently relies on state and federal funding to make some of these improvements. We would not have to rely so much on them. We would actually, a measure would help us leverage some of those dollars and make more improvements for our region. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? I have some comments, and you want to have a question, sir? I have some comments. The reason why we are seeking this half-cent sales tax is because our tax system is broken. We have a road tax or gas tax which doesn't do what it should do. The governor is pushing for more electric vehicles and a more gas-efficient vehicles, which tear up the roads but don't pay their fair share. They may be looking at a vehicle miles traveled versus a taxing of the gas. It's not only for the state sales tax, but there's a lot of other areas that are broken, and our national or federal tax system's broken. We can't get a transportation bill out at all from either the state or the nation. What this tax will do is front load for our local streets and roads, which is very good for this community. It'll provide more monies up front for us to repair and make safe the paths for our kids going to schools. Take a look at Verde Mesa out there by itself without a single sidewalk, except for right around the school. Mesa Verde. And you know, we have some, a lot of our kids are going from Riverbank to Enox or to Byers. There's not a single sidewalk between the two. So it's our task to make sure that we can provide a safe route to school for them. We are tasked to do that. This is the best way of bringing monies in. Now, for every dollar we get in for taxes on the sales tax, we could get up to $10 extra from state and federals to complete the projects. Let's put it in perspective. Let's say we get a couple $1 million that we're going to do Roselle or we're going to do Patterson Road. Well, if we get that $2 million from the sales tax, we could get up to $10 million to make that the best project ever, putting in everything that we absolutely need, including the parking that everyone wants. So the sales tax is extremely important for us to compete. The state has said, if you're not a self-help, which we are not, they won't be looking to help you out in the future. So they're going to turn their backs on us if we don't do something about it. So I don't want you to go out and just be a proponent. I want you to be an advocate for the passing of this. It is extremely important for us to get the roads fixed and the safe routes to schools. If you take a look, a lot of our streets don't even have sidewalks or gutters or can't even get rid of the stormwater. And this funding will help us in complete streets. I'm usually very conservative with money. And this, I believe, this taxation is more than required for us to continue at least maintaining what we have, if not improve, and we need to improve it. So with that, Rosa, I thank you very much. Look forward to working with you over the summer and the fall.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I was remiss to mention that I will be back probably in May or so with the project as after I work with your staff to make sure that so you identify those projects as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, public comment. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda and with the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council LRA. Individual comments will be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes per person. Each person may speak once during this time. Time cannot be yielded to another person. Under state law, matters presented during the public comment period cannot be discussed or acted upon. For record purposes, state your name and city of residence. Please make your comments directly to the City Council LRA Board. Do we have any public comment tonight?
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Board of Governors, my name is Edward Jones, known as Fast Eddie. I wonder if last meeting I mentioned something about trying to reduce the price for the farmers market. So people at my age can participate. I was wondering if you guys had a chance to chit-chat over that. That's all I had to say. I thought I'd bring it up to your attention. We appreciate it very much. It's not only I, but there's several people at my age bracket that would appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. No further public comment? We move to the consent calendar consisting of item 3A, waive readings. Item 3B, approval of February 9th, 2016, City Council and Local Redevelopment Authority minutes. Item 3C, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riverbank, California, to approve the amended and restated Joint Powers Agreement establishing the Stanislaus Council of Governments. Item 3D, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riverbank, California, appointing a member of the City Riverbank Budget Advisory Committee. Do I have any members that wish to pull any items? Do I have anyone from the public wishing to pull or question any of the consent items? If not, I bring it back for the council for recommendation.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
A second?
We have a motion to approve and a second.
Council Authority Member Barbara Martinez.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Chair Tucker.
Yes.
Mayor Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Item 4.1, second reading by title only and adoption of proposed ordinance number 2016-002 of the City Council of the City of Riverbank, approving rezoning of 2.42 acres of planned development located at APN 32-036-003, a project known as Ward Villas.
Mayor, members of the City Council, for members of the public, the City Council did receive a thorough staff report in regards to this item at the first meeting in February. As a part of that action, there was an ordinance that needed to be adopted, and so we're bringing that to you tonight for adoption as part of the second reading. If you have any additional questions, we do have staff available to address those as needed.
Are there any questions or comments for item 4.1 from the council? Seeing none, do we have any questions or comments from the public on item 4.1? Seeing none, I bring it back to the council for consideration.
Make a motion that we approve item 4.1.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve item 4.1 and a second.
Council members Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tucker,
Yes.
Mayor O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Item 4.2, we're going to table the second reading of proposed ordinance number 2016-003, amending the Riverbank Municipal Code Section 153.217, variance of Chapter 153, zoning of Title 15, land usage. We're going to be tabling this. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on item 4.2? Seeing none, I bring this back to the council for a recommendation.
I move that we approve item 4.2. A second.
We have a motion to approve and a second of item 4.2 to table the second reading.
Council members Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tucker,
Yes.
Mayor O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Item 5.1, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riverbank, California, adopting the interim and the ultimate plan line for Patterson Road.
Mayor, members of the City Council, John Anderson of J.B. Anderson Planning, who serves as the city's contract planner and the selected consultant to evaluate the Patterson Road situation, is here this evening to provide an update to you and ask for your concurrence on adoption of an interim and ultimate plan line for that very important corridor in our city. John Anderson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, John Anderson, J.B. Anderson Land Use Planning. Thank you, Jill, for the introduction. This is a project, quite frankly, that the city has been working on since, way before 1990, actually. There is a whole host of files, both in the engineering department and also in the planning department with Patterson Road. The city is about to embark on a very, very significant and very costly project, signalization of Roselle at Patterson. We're continuing to work with BNSF and the CPUC on the rail crossing and what impacts that may have. But yet, what we're doing with that project is still considered interim because both the general plan for the city of Riverbank and also the plan for the downtown specific plan area suggests that this is a major corridor and as such needs to be widened to carry a variety of different types, different modes of transportation, not only vehicles and trucks and commercial vehicles, but also for pedestrians, both the walking variety and also those individuals who ride their bikes. So it is a critical piece of infrastructure for the city of Riverbank that, quite frankly, needs to have some resolution as to what the interim and ultimate design of this roadway section may be. Staff over the last 2 years has spent a lot of time meeting with property owners, concerned individuals, et cetera, gone through a number of different workshops, and ultimately came forward to the Planning Commission, with a solution, and that's what we're going to present to you tonight. So this is a public hearing, and there's people in the audience that want to talk about this project specifically. It's important to note that the action that we're asking the council to take tonight is nothing more than to approve an idea and a concept. We are not improving improvement plans, and we're certainly not prepared to go out and start constructing, the improvements that we're going to talk about tonight. This is a strategy, a long-term strategy. Quite frankly, it would afford us the opportunity at city level, staff level, to seek and secure grant funding from other sources. So these would be non-city funds to help us widen this street section. And quite frankly, the design concepts we've come up with are the complete street kind of concepts, which means that it's for everybody. It's not necessarily just for vehicles or trucks or commercial vehicles, but it's also for pedestrians and for bicyclists. So it's a critical link. I'm glad that we are able to present this to you tonight as a concept, and I want to go through a PowerPoint presentation, and then at the end we can go over any questions or concerns that you may have. So again, this is kind of an outline of what I'm going to go through, kind of an executive summary, talking about existing conditions, site constraints, concept plan goals, and then also property owners' input, Planning Commission's action, and then our recommendation. So, as I've already said in my prelude, that this is, a major thoroughfare through the city of Riverbank, and is talked about and discussed in both the general plan and the downtown specific plan. And it is a major focus. The unfortunate part, or one of the constraints that we're dealing with, is the fact that Patterson Road, for the most part, is paralleled by a railroad that's either owned or managed by BNSF Railroad and or Sierra Railroad. The dividing line is at or around 8th Street. So the rail tracks easterly of 8th towards Claus are managed by Sierra Railroad. The rail line westerly of that is managed by BNSF. There's a number of sidewalk areas on the south side that are disconnected or are interrupted by overhead power lines and the poles that support those. There's a disconnected bike lane. And then, of course, we have, I didn't even mention it here, we have a number of bus stops on the north side of Patterson Road which really have no access, safe access to sidewalks, to access them. So, and not to mention the fact that you've got issues with ADA as well. Anyway, just a few concerns. The road segment that I'm talking about, again, is from Roselle to Claus. And what I've done is I've taken a couple different photographs in a couple different areas. So the numbers here, 1 through 6, are representative of the area of the photos that I'm going to show on the next slide. So the first slide would be photograph number 1, which is the intersection looking westerly at the BNSF main line in Patterson Road, near or just westerly of the first at Patterson intersection. And then this is looking back towards the west in front of Silicon Container, but again showing the fact that we have rail arms and we've got aerial power lines and whatnot both on the north and south side that interfere with road widening project. And then of course this is an area along the south side of Patterson Road showing that there is parking. There is residents along the south side. We've had a lot of discussion with those residents and obviously with council members as well. And the idea is to preserve this parking in our ultimate plan, and that's what we're going to present to you tonight. You've got a bike lane and you've got 2 lanes of travel, and then of course the rail line on the north side. And then you can even see in this photograph that you've got a power pole in the middle of the sidewalk, which makes it extremely difficult for individuals to maneuver around it, especially if they're in a wheelchair or some type of adaptive device. This is, again, similar cross-section. Looks like we're looking easterly towards 8th, easterly towards Claus. Again, shows power poles in the sidewalk. It shows the parking on the south side, bike lane, and then bike lane on the north side in this case, and then 2 lanes of travel. And then this is getting closer to Claus at Tina. Actually, this is Claus at Tina. Again, looking easterly. It kind of shows where we actually had enough right-of-way. That's actually 80 foot of right-of-way where that curb cut line is. But, we don't have all the lanes of travel that we need, and nor do we have an ultimate plan. So what we have along this segment is right-of-way widths that vary from 55 feet to 80 feet. And a number of obstacles along that, and a concern that we maintain parking along the south side of Patterson Road from Terminal to at least Tina. And you're going to hear a little bit of discussion about, why can't we provide additional parking from Tina easterly in front of the residents towards Claus, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So again, railroad constraints. Gosh, these overhead rail signals are extremely expensive to move. Unfortunately, at the BNSF main line, in the area that we're talking about for the ultimate road cross-section, there's at least 1 manual switchgear that would have to be relocated, and there's an electronic or automated switchgear on the south side of the BNSF, on the south side of Patterson Road on the BNSF main line that's controlled by BNSF headquarters that we're told would be extremely expensive to relocate. So we focused in this area our ultimate design more to the north to the south. Normally when you look at road right-of-way, you try to center your right-of-way take on the center line of the road. But when you have obstacles that are extremely cost prohibitive, you have to make adjustments, and we've done that with the ultimate plan that we're going to share with you tonight. And then that's being reflected in some construction drawings that engineering is working on currently. So again, right-of-way constraints, with the utility lines that would have to be relocated, and then the width of the right-of-way itself, and then the parking. Now these are service level thresholds. These are some of the daily traffic trips that we're currently experiencing. It's right out of the general plan for the city, and then the next, and it talks about if no improvements were made. But most importantly, if we don't do anything with this roadway segment, what it means to us in the planning world is that we've got Patterson Road that's going to be operating at a level of service of F rather than A through C. F being pretty much the worst traffic condition that you can imagine with full build out of the general plan and of the downtown specific plan area. So we have an obligation. We have an obligation with the environmental documents that were adopted, both the general plan and with the downtown specific plan, to develop a strategy to improve this roadway segment, and that's another reason why we're bringing this to you tonight. So lane configuration, the ultimate design, it would be nice if we had all the right-of-way that we needed to build 4 lanes of travel, and then a center turning lane, and then allow for parking, and then allow for pedestrian travel as well, in a sidewalk as well as a bike lane. But we're going to do the best we can, and I'm going to show that to you in just a minute. So what we've done is we've developed safe lanes of travel. We've got an 8-foot bike path along the north side, and we've got a continuous unobstructed 5-foot sidewalk along the south side. That's the goal. Complete street, I've already talked about that. More importantly, that we provide smooth ADA transitions, not only to the intersections but also to the bus stops and other things along that corridor. So the interim concept is pretty much what you see out there now dealing with the right-of-way that we have. The diagram on the top is near the intersection of Roselle and Patterson. We're suggesting 90-foot of right-of-way, so we've got a request into Sun Garden Ganji to secure the additional right-of-way we need there. But then once we get to First Street, the right-of-way reduces down to 75 feet. So we're going to deal with what we've got. As we move easterly towards Terminal, this is a little bit upside down, but we move towards Terminal, we go from 75 to 65 feet. This is at 3rd Street, I think. 75 to 65 feet of right-of-way, and then as we get closer to Terminal, in this case Terminal, it drops to 55 feet of right-of-way. So we're going to preserve the parking, we're going to get the lanes of travel that we can get in, and do what we can on an interim basis to allow for safe traffic flow along this segment, and also to allow for the parking and for, in this case, at least a continuous sidewalk on that south side, all the way over to Claus. The ultimate design, again, takes, in this area, this is at Roselle and Patterson, shows a 90-foot right-of-way, shows 4 lanes of travel, shows a turn pocket, shows a bike lane on the north side, and a continuous sidewalk on the south side. And that transitions towards First, where we would need additional right-of-way from BNSF, quite frankly, in order to get this, and to be able to get the lanes of travel. In this area, we'd have 4 lanes of travel, 2 east, 2 west, and a center turning lane. As we move towards Terminal, we're still going to be able to have the 4 lanes of travel that I discussed. No need really for parking in this area. But as we get close to Terminal, and this is the top diagram is at Terminal and Patterson, again moving easterly from the left to the right, you'll see that what we've got is we've got parking in front of the residence along Terminal. We've got 1 single travel lane going east, a center turn lane, and then 2 lanes of travel coming in the westerly direction, and then the 8-foot bike path on the north side. In this area, we're going to need an easement, a right of use, some type of permission from BNSF to be able to encroach 20 feet into a 100-foot railroad right-of-way. That's the best we can do to preserve everything that we need in this area, which includes the parking, to get the traffic flow that we need. According to our traffic engineer, our traffic flow is more important, peak AM and PM, from the east to the west, which is why you see 2 lanes of travel on the north side and only 1 lane of travel on the south side. In a perfect world, we'd have 2 lanes of travel on both sides. We can't do that because we can't take the parking away from these residents. So we've done what we can with what we have, or what we hope to get, I should say. That same alignment continues as we go further to the east, and then as we get close to Tina, which is the diagram on the bottom, then we're able to return to 2 travel lanes going easterly towards Claus Road at that point. There is, and I know the audience may not be able to see this, but there are a couple residents in here. There's the apartments on the corner, but there's a couple residents in here that currently enjoy parking, here. When the engineer physically goes to improvement plans, it's possible that these parking spaces can be preserved, but the idea is that you will need a right turn pocket in here as you approach Claus Road to be in order to turn south. So there's going to be a concern and additional work that's going to have to be done in that regard. But the idea is as we travel easterly from Claus is that we end up with this full 80-foot of right-of-way with all the improvements in it that we need, including the bike path. So that's Tina to Claus, I think, is what it's showing. So again, the idea is that we have, where's my little pointer? It's not working now. Anyway, right in here, there are residents here. So that second travel lane could be occupied by parking, and then somewhere in here you'd have to have that right turn pocket to come south on Claus Road. And again, that'll be refined as part of the improvement plan process, which, who knows when that'll be. So what we've done here is we've gone through a couple different workshops, February 25th, again on March 28th. We've walked the site actually on a Saturday with the property owners. We've listened to concerns. We've seen petitions. There's a strong interest to preserve parking, which is why we presented what we presented to you tonight. On January 19th, we presented this same package to the Planning Commission, and on a 4-0 vote, they approved their resolution as a recommendation to you tonight to adopt the ultimate interim plan as presented. Again, so these are some of the concerns that were raised. So a question was raised regarding, there was included a notice that was sent out to the property owners to clarify. So this has to do with the lanes of travel. So the lanes of travel, again, as I've described, at least in the area between Tina and Terminal, would include 2 lanes of travel westbound, a center turn lane, a continuous center turn lane, and then one lane eastbound. Actually it says westbound, but it should be the other way around. But anyway, I showed it to you in the illustration. Concerns raised regarding elimination of parking in Tina, I've already gone over that. That's going to actually take place during the actual improvement plan phase. And then there was this ongoing concern regarding quiet zone crossing or wayside horns or some type of device at the BNSF main line at Patterson Road. And I know, in fact, Mike Monching, raised this issue, and I know it's not a new issue. He's raised it a number of times. It is a huge concern. It's a huge concern for him, for his daily business and activity. I'm sure it's a huge concern for any residents that's within close proximity of this particular intersection. But suffice it to say, it's a very costly venture, not only in the terms of improvements that would be necessary at that intersection, but also the long-term obligations and implications associated with liability at that intersection. For example, the City of Manteca was considering installing wayside horns, which would again be at their expense for installation and maintenance in perpetuity, but they all should be responsible for any liability, and their insurance carrier told them that price tag would be close to $400,000 a year, just for one intersection for wayside horns. We tried to get information from the City of Escalon to find out, what is done to their insurance rates or what cost it is to them, and we haven't been able to get a response back. So we get more information on that, so we'll certainly respond back to the council. But keep it in mind, it's a very costly thing. The railroads have the upper hand, and have the ability to illustrate to you what they would require as a result of it. So it's not a very simple solution. And again, in January, the Planning Commission, on a 4-0 vote, made a recommendation to you as part of their resolution 2016-01 to approve the concepts as presented. So we ask that you approve it. So at this point, after I've gone through this presentation, are there any questions, comments, or concerns?
This is a public hearing. Any comments from the public, please? There's one at a time, and you have to be up here to speak.
Can you go back to number 4? Where's that thing? Plan 4. It shows Patterson Road from the railroad track. Please.
Whereabouts, Eddie? Which one?
Number 4.
Page 4?
Yeah.
The ultimate plan?
Go back some more.
Go back? Well, this is ultimate now.
All the way back to
All the way back.
number 4.
Number 4. Well,
There we go.
you want page 4?
What happened to 4?
I didn't see a 4. Picture 4? Okay,
Maybe
so there's
picture-
picture 1, picture 2, picture
Oh,
3,
back.
picture
Well,
4?
Back in the
We can't
beginning.
find it.
Photographs? Okay. You're talking about the picture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Up. Oh, keep going. You can run across number 4.
Okay, so, okay, here we go.
There you go.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, there you go.
Now,
Excuse me.
this is what you're trying to get 4 lanes out of this, or 2 lanes and a passing lane. Is that what it is? Is that right? On this road? That's Patterson Road from the railroad.
So the ultimate design for this segment of Patterson Road, which is between, for those at home, is between Terminal and Claus. The idea would be that you would have the sidewalk, the parking lane, you'd have 1 lane of travel in an easterly direction, you'd have a center turning lane, continuous, you'd have 2 lanes of travel heading westbound, and then you would have an 8-foot bike path north of that.
You don't have enough room, huh?
Well, the idea is I need 20 feet of right-of-way from the railroad, so I'm going to be 20 feet, that edge of pavement, if you will, if that is the existing right-of-way, we need another 20 feet towards the rail grade.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, Haskell Moore, 3848 Patterson Road, Riverbank. I'm sure glad to hear City John made that correction on 1 lane east and 2 lanes west, because on your paper here it shows the opposite. If this is one they're going to sign, it's not going to be right. But the parking that you spoke about, John, for the people after Tina Lane, I had looked around the corner to see your arrow there. You got the wrong house. The one I've been talking about, and the people that signed my petition, was at the end of the houses between Tina and the other side of Chief Tucker, before the city apartments. The last home there before the city apartments start are the ones of main concern that have about 5 or 6 cars and parking for 2 or 3. It wasn't where Jerry Myers lives. It wasn't his house at all, because you got a bus coming in there. And he's got plenty of room to park. He's got Chief Tucker and his neighbor, the first corner of Tina Lane there, he has Tina Lane also. He never uses that side of the street. The part that we were asking about was the last house on Patterson Road right before the city apartments start, the new apartments. That family there, that's the ones that really need a parking place. And John said on the 19th, the last meeting, that we would, he could probably figure 150 feet back from Claus Road and maybe save some parking for those people right there in that area. I thought we were on the same page then, but now I see tonight we wasn't just talking about that's at the corner of Tina. It's not at the corner of Tina. And we have, I drove my cars. I got 2 houses right there, 3 houses back from Tina Lane, as you know. And I parked them on a 17-foot driveway. And I tried to pull in, and I drove where you have the bike lane there now, and you got an 8-foot parking area there, like that looks. And in your plan, you're going to do it at the bike lane. Okay, I'm glad we got a parking lane. But I tried to pull on my driveway with one vehicle sitting there already, and I can't do it without driving over the sidewalk, the curb. My drive entrance way, I can't cut it that sharp. But I've got to get 2 cars on the driveway at 3848, because when 3840 is rented, I can't park over there. And I tried and tried, and I got one car that will turn almost sharp enough, but the other one won't. I got to do a double backup. And I thought, well, I'll just go to Tina and do U-turn. And then last night I thought, wait a minute, Tina Lane's going to be 4 lanes. I can't do a U-turn at Tina Lane and Patterson Road. I do it now because I don't want to pull it away, but that's not going to work. So if you fudge our 8-foot parking lane a little bit by a couple feet or something, it'd be appreciated. And so, also the store on the corner, the store on the corner there of Patterson and 8th Street. When you put the 2 lanes over here in the turn lane, and I don't know what you're gonna do about the bus stop, but people come headed west always park there and run in that store and back out real quick. And that guy's going to lose a lot of business when no one can park over temporarily for a little while. I'm sure you're not going to be able to park over there with a bike lane and a planter there. I don't know if you've done anything or came to any conclusion on what you could do there or not. But thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any further public comment? Seeing none, I close the public hearing. Bring it back to the council for questions, comments.
John, I have one question. At the railroad crossings, if we were to move them, if I understand correctly, we have to bear the full cost of the city for moving their switches or their equipment, right?
Yes.
And they don't have to pay anything for that.
Nope.
Why is that so?
Well, there used to be an opportunity through the CPUC to spend dollars on railroad crossings that were high on a list, and this still exists, but they're high on a list for public health and safety related issues. Without going into any amount of detail, this crossing doesn't qualify, or it's not on the list, or it's not high enough on the list. So, while we haven't given up on that, every indication we've gotten back from the CPUC representatives has been there's no money available, don't count on any money available. So, yeah. We never give up, but, at this point, we're not being told that there's, anybody out there that we can rely on to help us, fund this. Patterson Road, and the improvements associated with Patterson Road are in our fee program, so new development, theoretically pays their fair share of it. If we have development that actually pays the fees, which with Diamond Bar and the developments out in the Bruinville area will generate cash for transportation-related improvements, which are directed by council based on priority. And we'll do the best we can, as we have with other public works projects, in securing as much money as we can from other outside sources. I mean, that's what we do. Anyway, having the sales tax, certainly would help. Gas tax certainly would help make us more competitive. But we're still in the same boat, right? We're still competing with other entities that are trying to grab the same dollars. So, a couple points of clarification, if I may. One is that my slide 34 is incorrect, and where we are, the illustrations that I presented here and that are part of your resolution are correct, and that is that the ultimate plan would have 2 lanes of travel, easterly, a continuous center turn lane, and then 1 travel lane, 2 travel lanes from the east to the west, center turn lane, and then 1 travel lane going from the west to the east. What's interesting about one of these diagrams, let me show you this one here, is that you got parking here, you got residents there, and many of these residents, can't, they're to turn, off of Patterson Road if they're going from Claus Road towards 8th or towards Terminal, or in that direction, going easterly, they literally have to stop traffic in order to pull into their property. So what we're doing with the design is providing a continuous turn pocket to allow them to safely get out of the lane of travel and allow them to pull into their property. And again, providing the parking that they've asked for. But parking only on the south side, quite frankly. So if there's individuals that are parking on the north side, I mean, that's not what we're proposing. We're only proposing to preserve the parking that's necessary to support the residents on the south side. Anyway, any other questions?
I don't have a question. Well, kind of. So this whole resolution is just a starting point. And I just want to clarify that it's just a starting point so that if there's anything that comes up that pertains to that area, we would be able to apply for grants and so forth. And then as we get closer to any kind of development, we would, again, take another look at the plans that we have. These plans are not set in stone so that we would make adjustments as needed.
It sets forth a strategy that enables us to develop improvement plans which, when and if we have funding available, that we can physically build against. Especially in light of, you know, the project we're about ready to begin at Roselle and Patterson, it's important for us to have an ultimate strategy, you know, to build against. And quite frankly, until we had an idea of what we needed, we really didn't have that. So we were kind of building in the dark, so to speak, you know, not knowing fully what we needed to accomplish. But it's clear in the environmental documents that have already been adopted by this council that we have an obligation to, you know, to do these type of widening, to provide this type of traffic flow. So it's critical for us, and it's a planning tool. You know, we're hopeful we're able to secure additional funding to help us achieve this goal. I mean, but that's going to take time. So yeah.
First off, I participate in the San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority, and the Wayward Horns money is available through the railroads. They also stated that it meets 100% of the safety requirements, so there would be no additional liability. On the quiet zone is where you have your additional liability, from what I understand from the railroads. Can we have that verified? Secondly, is there physical property to do your streets all the way, even if we have to encroach on BNSF and Sierra?
Well, let's on your first point, we can certainly do more research on that. But you know, I haven't participated in the meetings that you participated in. I know, for example, that City of Stockton installed a quiet zone crossing on Murata, just westerly of 99, and they assumed 100% of the costs associated with that and 100% of the liability associated with that. And
with a quiet zone, yes,
in perpetuity.
that is correct.
And all I can report to is what I know from Manteca, which their insurance broker told them it'd be a tremendous obligation. Regardless, it would be a contractual commitment between the city and BNSF, which describes what the responsibilities are. So and that's something that's up for negotiation, and obviously if you're aware of other situations, perhaps we can twist BNSF's arm, but I don't know if that's possible. The other issue that's very critical in this discussion is that what we've put together for an ultimate design assumes that we're able to secure some type of an easement, lease arrangement, right of use from the railroads. We've contacted Congressman Denham's office. He's well aware of what we're trying to achieve. He has all these documents, and we're told that he'll help us. But again, that could be a long-term arrangement in and of itself.
My question was not that some property. Is there enough land that BNS have that for easement to where it would be safe for the trains, as well as safe for your complete street, 4 lanes all the way down, turning lanes included?
In our opinion, yes. But in the railroad's opinion, you know, they want to be left alone.
That's okay. You answered the question.
Right.
Thank you.
I mean, in our opinion, yes.
Okay, at this point, from the City Council, we are going to adopt this resolution tonight.
Yes, that is the recommended action.
I need a recommendation on one way or the other to adopt this resolution. of 5.1.
I make a motion that we accept item 5.1 as stated.
I'll second.
A motion to approve and a second on item 5.1.
Council members Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Tucker,
Yes.
Mayor O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Item 5.2, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riverbank, California, adopting the 2014-23 housing element and 2014-23 housing element negative declaration, and authorizing its submittal to the State Department of Housing and Community Development.
Mayor, members of the City Council, this is the hopefully the final presentation on the 2014-2023 housing element that is required by the state of California. Again, John B. Anderson is going to be was the contract planner for the city, and he and his associate David Niskanen worked on this project for many months. So at this time, John Anderson and David Niskanen will be providing an overview of the housing element update for your consideration tonight.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, John Anderson, J.B. Anderson Land Use Planning, and I'll be assisted by David Niskanen, my associate. But this housing element is a culmination of many months of effort. Unfortunately, this is another one of those state mandates where every so often you have to go in and update your housing element. In the past, it's been a 5-year term. This year, we're fortunate that we qualified and followed up on the state's commitment on an 8-year term. Actually, I think it's a 9-year term. This housing element qualifies for that. We're assured by state representatives that we've been working very diligently with that once council reviews, conducts a public hearing and takes testimony and disposes of this matter, that we would be certified very quickly. City of Ceres their council just recently adopted their housing element. It's off for certification for the state, and we're expecting certification back in the next 30 days. Theirs will be the first in this county, and Riverbank will be the second in this county. There's some discussion, and you're going to hear more about it tonight perhaps, and we can certainly respond to it, about how we evaluated either underdeveloped sites or sites that could be developed within the city of Riverbank. And we did a fairly exhaustive search of those properties using the assessor's maps, using the assessor's use codes, and also using aerial photo interpretation, as well as physical site visits. So we've done the best we can. We've had to deal with some policies, quite frankly, that were adopted on the last housing element update that created a little bit more difficulty for us. One of the areas that we really had to prove out was the fact that there was a commitment to rezone and redesignate approximately 80 acres for high-density residential housing. And as your council is aware, that's not necessarily a popular position, especially if you're trying to locate, a high-density residential housing project close to existing single-family residential units. So we were able to demonstrate successfully to the state that we don't need to rezone 80 acres. That the general plan that we recently adopted in 2009 provided that opportunity. So we're very encouraged with the outcome of that discussion and debate with the state. It took quite a bit of work. David spent a lot of time getting that accomplished. So after having said that, David's going to go through his PowerPoint presentation, and then we're both here and available to respond to specific questions that are raised either by yourself or by individual in the audience. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John and Mayor O'Brien, members of the council. Like John said, we're bringing forth the update to the 2009 to 2014 housing element, this being the 2014 to 2023 housing element. And in my presentation, I will go over the background, kind of the timeline, if you will, of how we got today's city council meeting, the housing element requirements, contents, the regional housing needs, and the city's ability to address those needs. Our correspondence and meeting with the California Rural Legal Assistance, major updates to the programs and policies within the housing element, and then also CEQA review and staff recommendation. And to start, for background, back in September of last year, we conducted a public workshop. 5 people attended, and in this meeting, we discussed the housing element what's required of the city to update it, kind of kickstarted us off in this whole endeavor. That meeting was noticed in the Riverbank News. We also posted it at City Hall North and South, and we posted on the city's website. In December of that year, we mailed out a questionnaire to public housing providers, developers, nonprofit organizations. An example would be Habitat for Humanity, to get their input on the last housing element and then notify them that we're starting this process. In April, we went to the Planning Commission with the draft 2014 to 2023 housing element to request that they give you folks a recommendation for staff to submit to HCD for a 60-day mandated review. That meeting was noticed with the Riverbank News, as well as posted on the City Hall North and South. And that is the first time when we had the housing element that was located at City Hall North, South, the Riverbank Library, and the city's website. So the housing element's been available for public review since that time. In May of 2015, we went to the City Council, and you authorized us to submit the housing element to ACD for a 60-day review. July 13th, we received their comment letter, which required a number of revisions to the housing element to comply with state law. And from July 13th to December of last year, we worked with HCD to bring the housing element into compliance. And that culminated into a letter that we received in December that, just like John said, once we submit for compliance, then our housing element will be in compliance with state law. January 19th, last month, we went to Planning Commission for a recommendation to you to adopt the 2014-2023 housing element and negative declaration, and to authorize us to submit for state certification. And for housing element requirements, it's one of the mandated elements of the general plan. Unlike the other elements of the general plan, it requires a periodic update, and as John notified you, usually it's a 5-year turnaround time. This cycle, it's a 9-year planning period from January 1, 2014 to September 30th, 2023. It's reviewed by HCD, which is unique compared to the other elements of the general plan, and then we take a look at the existing and the projected housing needs for all economic segment of the community. The contents of the housing are kind of like a step process where we take a look at the household and employment characteristics, housing stock characteristics, supply and needs, production opportunities, constraints, which is government and non-governmental constraints. We evaluate the last housing element specific to their programs and policies, what worked well, what didn't work well, what were completed, so on and so forth. And then through that process, we develop new or revise the housing element goals and policies for this housing element. The regional housing needs allocation is a regional requirement to plan for development, plan for housing availability. And for Riverbank, that culminates into 1,280 units spread among the low income, moderate, and above moderate income groups. To address this, we took a look at the vacant and underutilized land within the city limits. We looked at land within the downtown specific plan, within the sphere of influence, and then lands outside the sphere of influence, specific to the proposed Crossroads West specific plan. And we came up with a total unit availability of 3,551. Compared, if we match that against the RENA numbers, we have a surplus of 2,300 units or so.
Equate that to numbers, because by 2040, DOF requires us to have close to 50,000 residents, according to the report.
Right, right. And this is housing units. It's not necessarily what we use, 3.4. 3.4. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and this is housing units. It's not really contemplating any population. Okay, understood. To understand.
I'm trying to make sure that we have the sight on the longer term.
Right.
As well as our short term.
Right, right, right. In the kind of the public comment period through the housing element, we Received letters in June from the California Rural Legal Assistance. They're a nonprofit legal advocacy group specific to low-income housing, farm worker housing, and homeless population needs. Those comment letters, they required us to take a look and revise the housing element in those areas, and there was a number of revisions that we did alongside with them. In October, we received an additional comment letter from them that is in response to revisions that we sent to HCDs, because through this time, we are working with HCD to bring the housing element into compliance. We're submitting revisions to them, as well as submitting revisions to CRLA, so they see all the revisions that are happening to the housing element step by step. In November, we met with the CRLA to discuss and review the revisions and their comments. And then finally in December, we received a comment letter that complimented the city for their programs that are included with farm worker housing, homeless needs, public participation, and low-income housing. And the city will continue to work with CRLA and housing-related issues, and certainly at the next cycle, which will be in 2023, we will include them if we are working on your housing at that time. We have a number of major updates to the existing programs that we worked with HCD as well as CRLA. Program 1 is to meet the unaccommodated need from the fourth cycle to rezone, and it's actually one site compared to the 80 some odd acres that were required from the last housing element. 2.1E is to assist development of housing for farm workers, and it's really to provide technical assistance to those developers, and then work with the agricultural community to develop and build year-round and seasonal agricultural housing. Program 2.1 is transitional supportive housing. If you remember, we did adopt an ordinance that permitted transitional supportive housing in the R3 zone, and that was based on the 2009-2014 housing element program requirements. The state has come back and now has required the city to revise the ordinance to include transitional supportive housing as a use permitted in the R1 and R2 zone. Program 2.1H is employee farm worker housing in the R1 zone, permitted use per the Health and Safety Act. And then 2.1I is development disabilities to refer those groups to the Valley Mountain Regional Center. 2.1K is a regional cooperation with homeless needs to be a part of and cooperate with the Stanislaus County Housing and Supportive Service Collaboration. 3.1D is to review the parking requirement to see if there's any type of constraint to R2 and R3 zones. 3.1F is to simply provide the housing element to water and sewer providers. In this case, it would be the city. So we submit the housing element to those departments. And then finally, the constraints to affordable housing projects to provide fast-track priority processing, basically assign a planner to those projects and a point of contact for the city for that developer. And then 4.2A is to restrict land division of sites currently zoned high-density residential. And finally, the public engagement and participation to promote public participation within the next cycle. We really want to make an emphasis to post the public notices in English and Spanish, as well as solicit input from affordable housing in the city, as well as partner with churches for public engagement. For CEQA, an initial study has been prepared. The review period for the initial study closed on January 6, 2016. One comment received from the Central Valley Regional Quality Control Board, and it basically stated their current requirements and more of an informational, not a comment letter on the initial study itself. And based on the initial study, it's been determined that the proposed project will not have a significant effect on the environment, and a negative declaration has been prepared. We recommend that the City Council adopt the 2014 to 2023 housing element and negative declaration, and authorize staff to submit to HCD for certification. And that concludes my presentation. John and both of us are here to answer any questions that you may have, as well as public comment they have.
This is public hearing.
First thing, I have a question. On your, what do I do with it? Program 2.1G, that's in section 9-4, the housing element. That program refers to rezoning R1 and R2 for, this has to do with the transitional and supportive housing and stuff. It refers to rezoning R1 and R2. My question is, when you pass this tonight, does that automatically rezone us, or do we get some kind of a notice and a chance to come back and say,
My understanding is that will be noticed. I'll have the experts talk about that, but it doesn't happen automatically.
So we'll get a notice.
You will get a notice, and you'll get a public hearing on that.
Okay. On 1-2, in the introduction, under state law requirements, it talks about what the element must contain: an assessment of housing needs, inventory of resource sources and constraints. And on the back, on this next page, is a program set which sets forth a 9-year schedule of actions local government has to take. Number 1 on that is identification of adequate sites that will be made available. I remember Mr. Hallinan little talk a while back about the difference between may and will and shall. So it's not giving you an option. If you put these properties on this, then those sites will be made available. Now
Yes.
you have, okay.
They will be made available. Again, action until it becomes a shall. Will be made available. It does not have to be developed.
Will and shall are not the same.
No, they're not.
Okay. You have these tables with all these properties on there, whether they're vacant, whether they're underutilized, whether they're on the downtown Pacific plant. Okay. Remember, that has to be adequate. My property, my garden lot, I have 2 properties, my home and my garden next door, and they're separate properties. My garden lot is on the downtown Pacific plan list, the very first one on the list. It's 0.08 acres. It's only 3,000 square feet for the lot, whole lot. Minimum building requirements in your city code is 6,000. It's not big enough to build on. It never has been. That's why it's a garden lot. I never got any notice. Nobody ever got any notice that their properties were being put on these lists. My issues with this is, first of all, when it was sold, my parents bought that back in the early 70s because the guy that had it back then could not build because it was too small. The city would not allow him to build on it. My dad bought it, put a garden on it. It's been a garden ever since. It still doesn't meet minimum requirements of the city code to build on it. It still doesn't meet Pacific plan to build on it. It's too small. So it's not adequate. There's 2 other empty lots within a half block of me. One down at the corner of Santa Fe and First Street by the skate park, which they're trying to build on anyway. The other lot's down there on the corner of Topeka and Condrey. It's also bigger than mine. That lot belongs to Sun Garden Ganji. It didn't get put on the list. And despite the emails that I got late tonight from Mr. Anderson, I went back and rechecked the assessor's office, and it's still in Sun Garden Ganji's name, but it's not on the list. It's adequate enough to build. There used to be a house on there years ago. You might even see part of the foundation there. My garden lot is not big enough to build on. I wanted to put my 2 properties together. I can't merge them. I went to the county. They were willing to do it. We were going to work it out. The city stepped in and said, no. First you hire an engineer and have that line taken off. Then you have our city engineer at $500 more. Okay, what the other engineer did. I can't put them together, which is, I don't think it's right at all, but I can't merge them together because of that. In the meantime, now, you want to put my garden lot into your housing element, and my understanding is that if I do, there is a way, the county came up with a way that they could do it and take the line out so they'd be together, but now they don't know yet, I haven't heard back from them, if they do that and you guys put my garden lot in your housing element, if that puts my house in there with it, because now it's all one lot. Bottom line is, it doesn't meet building requirements. It never has. And it shouldn't be in there. And I'm asking you to take it out before you pass this thing.
This is a public hearing. Any no further public comments? Bring it back to the city council. Can that be explained?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like John Anderson to address how the list was prepared, what it signifies and what it doesn't signify, and then
And then while he's making those comments, if a person that's designated chooses not to build on it, there isn't any option for us to build on it.
So let's talk about, again, John Anderson, Mayor, members of the council, representing JB Anderson Land Use Planning. We're talking about the housing element for the city of Riverbank. The first thing is that this is a policy document. The housing element provides guidance to, and quite frankly, an indication to residential and or affordable housing builders as to what is available, what might be available. The city doesn't build, right? I mean, we're not going to go out and physically build on any one of these sites. We're just going to talk about, you know, what can be available, how we can meet our regional need, which is the arena numbers that's been presented. So let's make that really clear. Before I address the issue that the city manager's asked me to address, I want to talk about this zone code change that we're talking about relative to transitional housing. This is demanded by HCD. I'm sorry to put it so frank, but the state of California Housing Community Development Department gives us really not much flexibility when we're trying to move forward with these housing elements, and that they've told us is that we need to modify our zone code, not rezone properties, but modify our zone code for R1 and R2 properties to allow for transitional housing. So just like the last housing element, you had a number of different projects that were identified or programs. That's what this will be. Staff will work to try to achieve these programs, some of which we may be able to achieve, some of which we may not be able to achieve. But we're not rezoning anybody's property. I want to make that really clear. As it relates to the tables that we used, analyzed assessors' parcels, and then that responded to what was on those assessors' parcels. Mrs. Halbert has identified her property next door as a garden lot. Got it. I understand that. It is a separate AP. It's a separate assessor's parcel, and on that assessor's parcel, there's no improvements, none, zero. So in our eyes, that is an underdeveloped or undeveloped piece of property that should go on the list. Now, what David shared with you earlier is that we have a surplus of potential residential development. It far exceeds our demand. You could easily remove her lot, if you'd like, tonight from that list, and it doesn't appear on the list. That's fine. We don't have a problem. We don't need it. I mean, but it is an underdeveloped piece of property. It's a separate APN. Whether it can be built on with the provisions on the downtown specific plan, frankly, I haven't evaluated that, and I can't really respond to that tonight. The other properties that are referenced that are owned by Sun Garden, Ganji, yes, they are designated medium density residential. They're in the downtown specific plan as neighborhood residential type development. There are actually two properties there right behind El Ranchito. One property is larger than the other. The property that is on Topeka and First is actually a rather large parcel. One parcel, but one APN, okay, but it may actually consist of a number of different town site lots, but it's improved. Improved meaning it's got a house on it. That APN has got a house and various outbuildings on it. Does it have land that could be developed? Yeah, certainly, but it didn't qualify as an undeveloped property because it had improvements, and in our opinion, it had improvements that had some value. Certainly more than just nothing or a garden as been described. So we did the best both with field verification and also with Google Maps, to identify those properties that were vacant. And in this case, it is a legal parcel. It appears to be, even though it may be undersized, and it is vacant. So that's why it was on the list. So again, we can remove it from the list. That's fine. Because those assessors parcels are on the list, those doesn't mean that they'll be developed today, tomorrow, or in 50 years. It's just an indication as part of this document that they might be available for, residential development at some point in the future. But that's kind of a note to the individuals out there that they still have to continue to do their investigation as to whether or not it's perfectly capable of being developed in a residential manner, because there may be other issues has been identified, like setbacks, that it may not be able to meet because it's too small. So anyway.
I also like to point that as long as Ms. Halbert owns that property, she controls the development on that property.
As well with anyone else who owns the property.
If I could follow up on that, Mayor.
Right now, let's cut short. That doesn't hurt us to remove it.
Not at all.
Okay. However, it doesn't alleviate any other restrictions for her. If she wants to combine it, she has to go through the engineering. If she wants to protect it, she has to go through the engineering and pay the fees as so.
Okay, let me put my private hat on. My inclination would be not to try to merge those parcels, because it appears to be a separate saleable legal parcel that she could always transfer out independent of the house. So why would you want to merge your lots? If the real concern is being on this list of the housing element, by all means, we can remove it from the list. It's not a big deal. We have more than enough surplus, as indicated in our analysis, to support the conclusions that we've satisfied the state's requirements and our regional housing needs.
My final question is, reading your report here, I was surprised that we're now have to be at 50,000 by 2040 from DOF. Stan Coggs has us at a slightly lower number. With the planned developments and with RENA and all the others, do we make those numbers? I'm playing the devil advocate because that's something future. It's another job that I have to do here in a couple of weeks, and I want to make sure that.
I always get into trouble when I start looking at population projections, because we don't know what's going to happen, right, in the future. We don't know if there's going to be some limitation on water. We don't know if there's going to be some major catastrophe in the economy that puts us in a tailspin like we just went through, where you basically shut off any new construction. So, it's a guess. It's a best guess as to what your future population might be. We have enough census data over the last 30 and 40 years that we can, reasonably project what our population might be. Quite frankly, in Stanislaus County, it's been right around 1%. In some areas, maybe a little bit higher than that. We've got a couple big projects moving forward that, might skew that number a little bit higher. But, quite frankly, 50,000, population here with, might be achievable. But again, we really don't know. We're doing the best we can, with the information that we have.
Our projections based on what HCD requires, are we going to meet the DOF's requirements? Because they don't talk to each other.
I understand that, but we're doing the best we can. Okay.
That was just a rhetorical.
I understand.
Say you don't care, and we'll move on.
Well, no, you asked a pointed question. I'm trying to respond.
John, I have a question.
Yes.
Clarify for me, because you mentioned something about that she could keep the lot and it was saleable.
Yes.
To be built on. But,
well, I didn't say that.
Okay,
I said it could be sold.
Yeah, but you can't build on it unless we change our zoning on it, because it doesn't meet the
well,
size
again, I haven't evaluated that property specifically. I know it's rather narrow, and every time you have a narrow piece of property, you have problems meeting setback requirements. With the new downtown specific plan, setback standards are a little bit different, so it's difficult for me to respond specifically to that piece of property. Whether it's buildable or not, I don't know. It appears it's saleable, because obviously, her father or mother purchased that lot independently, And I think it's part of one of the
Understand that.
original town site lots.
But unless we modified our lot size, she couldn't build on it per se, right?
I don't know. I would have to evaluate it, that site specifically against the downtown specific plan and those standards. You know, I cannot respond to that. I can guess that it's probably too narrow, and because of that, the width of the lot, it doesn't meet the setbacks side to side, and therefore, constrains the ability of that site to be developed in a residential manner. I don't know. But then again, you can ask for variances, right? You can ask for a variance from this very council, for 2 setbacks because of the unique characteristics of that site. So that's a real difficult question to answer. Okay. Okay.
Do I have a motion on item 5.2?
I'd like to make a motion, but I would combine it with a motion to remove Ms. Halbert's property
Modification.
from the list.
The appropriate APN.
I second that.
We have a motion to modify Resolution 5.2, removing 1 parcel, and we have a second.
Council members Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Tucker,
Yes.
Mayor O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Item 5.3, thank you all for the hard work on that. If you haven't had a chance to read it, it's exhilarating. But it was a lot of hard work that went into it, and I truly appreciate it. And I know that although we have 5 more years before we have to do something, it actually starts in 3 years, even though we have 8 years or 9 years in it. Item 5.3, first reading and introduction of a proposed ordinance of the City Council of the City of Riverbank, California, to amend sections 52.01, 52.32, 52.34, and 52.61 of Chapter 5.2, Water, of Title 5, Public Works, of the City of Riverbank Code of Ordinances.
Mayor, members of the City Council, as you know, this council and the administration and the staff have taken significant actions in order to meet the water conservation mandate from the state of California, as well as to implement the enforcement action put forth on the city because we have not met the 32% reduction. Many of those items were done consistent with the Urban Water Management Plan under the authority of the State Water Resources Control Board action and the Governor's executive order. This item before you this evening is essentially a housekeeping item to codify those and to update our ordinances. We do anticipate that there will be additional review of this item as we go through the summer, but in the meantime we wanted to update the code to reflect what has been done to date. Michael Riddell will provide an overview of what this ordinance will do, and Annabelle Aguilar assisted with the preparation of it, so both will be available to address questions.
Thank you.
Evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, and I had to look long and hard to find that picture too. So it actually took me all of about 30 seconds. So as the city manager stated, this is more of a housekeeping measure that will enable us to codify or clean up and make everything kind of flow together. The purpose of the ordinance amendments will establish the water restriction regulations for outdoor water use, seasonal landscape irrigation schedules, prevention of the water waste, establish penalties for noncompliance, establish an appeal hearing process to settle administrative citations issued to violators, and provide the City Council with the flexibility to set water use restrictions by resolution, which will promptly adopt the city's regulations to the changing water conservation measures and mandates. This will, in conjunction with what the City Council has done in the past, as the city manager mentioned, kind of bring everything together that will help us follow through with the state mandate and also to meet the water conservation order. So it is staff's recommendation that the City Council approve the first reading and introduction by title only for the proposed ordinance, and will initiate the scheduling of the second reading of this ordinance for March 8th to consider adoption.
Okay. The current regulations that we have, that we're codifying,
That's correct.
we are looking in March to revise it for May through whatever.
Correct.
Okay, so this is not the last,
No, this will, or doing,
just to make sure that everything is legal for what we've done. Okay,
that's
thank
correct.
you.
And it also gives the council the ability to make changes by resolution.
Right. Okay. Thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none, bring it back to the council for recommendation.
Motion we approve item 5.3.
A second.
We have a motion to approve and a second on item 5.3.
Council members Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tucker,
Yes.
Mayor O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Item 5.4, resolution of the City Council of the City of Riverbank, California, approving the fiscal year 2015-16 mid-year budget amendments.
Mayor, members of the council, Maricela Garcia, our Director of Finance, will provide an overview of the mid-year budget.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight I have for you the 2015-16 mid-year budget review. I'll skip over the overview and we'll go to where we were at the final budget adoption back in June of 2015. At that point in time, we had made a projection that we would begin the fiscal year with a 9.9% reserve, almost a 10% reserve that's required by the City Council. We had estimated revenues of $8.43 million and estimated expenditures of $8.65. And we're looking at ending the fiscal year with a reserve of 7.5%. That left us with a with a deficit to our reserve of approximately $208,000 and included a structural deficit of $222,000. So I did want to point out that that structural deficit of $222,000 did include several one-time strategic expenditures that the City Council was going to make. The first being the final payment of the ED Bank loan for $123,000 and the Cassell accounting software that you so graciously bought for my finance department of $23,500. So those were total one-time expenses of $147,000. With that structural deficit that I was projecting of $222, really only about $75,000 of that was ongoing expenditures. The mid-year budget review provides us an opportunity to look at our projections and revisit those that were made back in June. We make adjustments based on any new information that's received and revenue expenditure trends that we've been experiencing. And it also provides the departments with an opportunity to request new appropriations for emergency projects that require some immediate attention. And so here we have general fund revenue adjustments that I am recommending based on information that we've received from the state, from the county, as well as from some of the departments. You'll notice the first being our property tax current secured. We're looking at a negative adjustment of $40,000, and that's due to an overpayment that the county made to us in the prior fiscal year. Property transfer tax, which is a tax on all home sales, has been increasing thanks to KB Homes and to other resale of existing homes throughout the city, and so we'll be looking for an adjustment of $20,000. Our building permits continue to increase due to increases in solar permits as well as our new construction permits, and so we are recommending an increase of $50,000. Plan check fees are also associated with that, and so an increase of $40,000 is reflected there. Our vehicle code fines, we're looking at a decrease of $60,000 based on our current revenue that's been received from the state. I can't quite pinpoint why that negative adjustment needs to be made, but based on the trends that I've seen from the 3 past fiscal years as to where we would be at this point in time, we're about $60,000 down. So I don't foresee that in the next 6 months or the next 4 months that we'll be making up that difference. And then we're also reflecting a decrease in the transfer in of management fee. That transfer in of management fee is a transfer in from other funds that helps to offset salaries. And this particular case, we're going to have a staff vacancy, or we do have a staff vacancy in our HR department. And so we will not need that that expenditure offset, since we won't be anticipating those expenditures occurring. And so our original projection for our general fund revenues was $8.43 million. Our amended projection is $8.5, so that's about a $75,000 increase to our revenues. Our expenditure adjustments, I've just highlighted some of the major ones. We're looking at adding $8,100 so that our planning commissioners can attend the Planning Commission Academy that's going to be occurring in the upcoming weeks. We're also projecting a savings from our vacant human resource manager position, and so that will be $74,000 that the city will be saving through June only. This is not a projection for the upcoming fiscal year, so that the upcoming fiscal year we will see the full year budgeted for that particular position. Administrative Services Department, we are making a request for an upgrade to our current telephone system. And I'll have more information on that a little bit later. And then in Parks, we're also recommending an adjustment for the replacement of the golf cart, which is actually going to be grant funded by this San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. And then we're also looking for an increase for the final payment of the SR 108 relinquishment grant, and that one was also grant funded, and the funds were already set aside in the reserve for that particular item. We just didn't know what fiscal year that billing would come in. And so for our expenditures, we're looking at an actual increase of $69,700 when compared to the original budget that you adopted back in June. Part of that $69,000 does not includes two adjustments that were made during the fiscal year independent of the mid-year budget. That included monies that you appropriated for the purchase of the property on Terminal and Reich, and also the MSR update and SOI expansion work that's currently being done. And so as of the end of this fiscal year, my projection for this mid-year budget is that we will have an ending reserve of 8.2%. That still leaves us at a deficit of, from that 10% reserve we're required to have, of $149,000, and still leaves us with that structural deficit of $216,000. But as you'll recall, about $147,000 of that is one-time in nature. A few of our other funds that we'll be making adjustments to are gas tax fund, just looking to add some professional services funds for an engineering and traffic study that's required to be done by the city. We're also increasing the reserve projection that was made at the beginning of the fiscal year. And so our gas tax is currently at will be at $226,000 as of the end of the fiscal year, or 26%. Our sewer fund, we're looking at an initial increase in revenues of $50,000 due to the rate increase that was adopted by the City Council. That's just a very conservative estimate, since we haven't seen a complete billing of this entire rate for all of our residents. And then we're also looking at a decrease in their expenditures overall due to the salary savings from that vacant HR position. We're also looking to amend the beginning reserve that we had for the sewer fund upwards of $45,000. And so as of the end of the fiscal year, we're looking at a 22% reserve for the sewer fund. We still do have a structural deficit, but we know that next fiscal year, with the rate increases, we will no longer have that deficit. Water service is similar to sewer. We're just estimating a very conservative $50,000 increase this fiscal year for the new rates. We are asking for additional fundings for water conservation and our water utility workers. So the salaries and benefits for those positions are $65,000, and that is 4 different part-time positions that are included. Capital projects, we're looking at a replacement of the heat pumps at the corporation yard, and so the cost that is reflected here of $3,000 is a shared cost between our gas tax fund and our sewer fund. And this one also is experiencing the decrease in the transfers out of management fees. And so our water fund status as of the end of the fiscal year will end at a 58% reserves, fairly healthy, and a structural deficit of $14,000. Our neighborhood improvement fund will also go through a series of adjustments. We did receive a lien payoff, which translates to the fact that the general fund will not have to subsidize that amount to the neighborhood improvement fund. So that's a positive decrease in the revenues. Our special projects fund, we've been receiving revenues from our building permits for system administration fees. These funds are then in turn reimbursed to the general fund to cover building and planning related expenses. AB 109 realignment funds, and so the city received its allocation this year of $23,900, and so we're making the adjustment for that. And we are requesting an additional $5,000 in expenses in order to make some building improvements at the Sheriff's Department, which is required by the DOJ. Our recreation fund, we're asking for additional funds in order to do some maintenance to the community gym. And this is a shared cost between the school district and the city of Riverbank, and so this is the city's portion. And our system development fees, wastewater, this isn't a new appropriation. This is just a budget appropriation for my record keeping and for my auditors. Last fiscal year, the City Council appropriated this dollar amount for the engineering and design work of the California sewer line. What I failed to do when I prepared the new budget was include that dollar amount since the expenses had not been incurred, and so this is just submitting a paper trail for my auditors that the funds were reappropriated. And the one major capital expense request that we have for you tonight is that upgrade of our telephone system here at City Hall. It includes an upgrade of all our communication servers, new phones, and will provide us some connectivity to our Public Works Department. Currently, if a resident calls and it's a call that should be going to Public Works, we have to tell that resident to hang up and call Public Works at their number. With this new system, we'll have the capability of just being able to transfer the calls. So it will significantly help some of the customer service issues that we have, as well as the fact that our current system is over 20 years old and has failed twice and has actually not worked. So residents have not been able to call in. So we are looking for your guidance on being able to make this one-time expense. And where we're going in the future, as we're preparing for the fiscal year 2016-17 budget, we do have to keep in mind that we need continued funding for our water conservation efforts. We do have some staffing issues with the vacant positions, as well as positions that are currently part-time positions but really need to be full-time, particularly in our recreation department. Then increasing costs in personnel benefits such as our CalPERS. That cost continues to increase. This upcoming fiscal year, we're going to see a little bit over 1.5% increase in CalPERS. We're also looking at decreasing general fund reserve levels due to some expenditures that are being made, strategic in nature, but they do result in lower reserve levels than the City Council has deemed to be comfortable with. There's also been a decrease in sales tax and gas tax revenue due to the decreases in gasoline prices, and so we'll have to keep a close eye on our gas tax fund, because at some point in time, if those revenue trends do not change, we will need to look at subsidizing that fund once again. And we also do have, on the positive note, is continued increase for new development, both on the housing and the commercial side. And so for tonight, it's recommended that you consider approving the mid-year budget adjustments that were presented, as well as provide direction on the new budget appropriation for the All Works telephone system. And I'm available for questions.
CalPERS unfunded liabilities of what, 50,000 this year?
No, the CalPERS unfunded liability actually amounts to over $200,000 for the city annually. Next fiscal year will be 240. That's correct. And each year it does go up. So what the city does have the option of doing is looking at all of the line items that make up that unfunded liability, and if there's available funding, they can pay off some of the smaller ones, which will decrease that unfunded liability.
And the funding for the water conservation employees, one of those were mandated by the water board?
Technically, 2 of those are mandated.
Should talk into this, yes.
Technically, 2. The current position that we have has been mandated to remain, and then we would have 1 additional employee.
Full-time, part-time?
We're currently looking at part-time.
And then you said that we were comfortable with the decrease in the revenues for the general fund. I would like to rephrase that we are accepting the requirements that it has to go down, not that we're comfortable with it. At least on my behalf. I don't know about the rest of you. When we get down to 3.2 in 2018-19, that's pretty low. Okay, any comments, questions? This is under public hearing. Do I have any public comment on item 5.4? Seeing none, bring it back to the council for comment, recommendation, or action.
I make a motion that we accept item 5.4 as so stated.
And you need additional direction on the phone system, correct? Is that part of your motion
Yes,
or not?
and with the additional direction on the phone system.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5.2, which is the 2015-16 mid-year budget amendment, and to approve the one-time capital expenditure that will impact the city budget. And we have a second.
Council members Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Tucker,
Yes.
Mayor O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Item 5.5, it's an LRA item, a resolution of the Local Redevelopment Authority of the City of Riverbank, California, approving the fiscal year 2015-16 mid-year budget adjustment and accepting the second quarter review expenditure report.
Mayor and board members, Melissa Holloway and Debbie Olson will be presenting this budget. Melissa will be doing the primary presentation, and Debbie is available to address any questions or provide comment as needed.
Good evening, Chair and authority members. For the sake of time, I'm just going to kind of breeze through the second quarter expenditure report and revenue for December 31st. The only things that are that stand out is our utility revenue, as I told you in the first quarter. We do catch up in the second quarter, as you can tell. We've received quite a bit of revenue for that account. Travel, we are in the hole a little bit, but travel costs kind of went beyond what we had assumed at the beginning of the budget year, so we are going to be doing an adjustment for that in mid-year. And the same with other services. It did increase a little bit because we did do additional study for engineering on the panels and roof replacement for ESCA number 2. The numbers we did have were from 2013, so they were a little outdated, so we had them update those numbers for us. Fund 197, facility operations and maintenance, nothing really that stands out right now except for the fire suppression maintenance. That again was in the hole. Last year we did a five-year suppression maintenance, and we did have a lot of repairs that were done. As those repairs were being done, they found a pump that needed to be replaced, and so that made the cost overrun on that as well. It didn't leave us in the hole, as you can see. Total revenue and total expenditures leaves us still a net revenue received for the second quarter of $110,000 surplus. Fund 198 OEA grant is where we get our funds for most of our administrative expenses and some professional services. What we do expend, we do get received back in a request, so it's a wash. The budget overview for second quarter, again, we're ahead $110,000. For fiscal year to date, we still have a $280,000 surplus. Now for the mid-year budget overview. We do have some revised projections and adjustments to the revenue expenditures. I'll go over those, kind of pass through this so I can explain it as I come upon the slide. Sale of personal property, we have taken that once again out of the budget. We don't expect the MOA to be signed before June 30th, unfortunately. Miscellaneous revenue, we had recorded that we were getting an insurance claim. It did come in at the end of June, and there was a journal entry putting it into the prior fiscal year, which shows in our cash on hand that we have. So we did that reduction in this mid-year budget for revenue. Proposed expenditure changes, we do have the increase in travel, which is going to be picked up within the OEA supplemental grant that we're working on at this time. If not, before year end, we will have that available in leasehold. Marketing and branding, we've reduced $5,000. We just don't see the need through June 30th. We did increase other services for the grant writer that we procured and the engineering RFQ that was done for the additional engineering that we needed for ESCA number 2 projections. Well maintenance we've reduced, just water testing we've reduced. We just don't see us spending quite that much in this fiscal year, and so we've reduced that. Fire suppression maintenance, we did have to increase it due to the pump replacement. Propane we've reduced. Repairs we've kind of brought up just a little bit because of the storm events we had, and we're going to be seeing some of those charges coming through. We did reduce common area costs a little bit. We do have energy efficient equipment that's been installed by a tenant on the site that has reduced their power bills significantly, so we've brought that down. The proposed fiscal year budget, we did have $3,250,821 in revenue projected and revenue expenditures of $2,412,639 with a year-end balance of $838,182. With the changes that we've made, the proposed changes we made to the budget, we're going to have a reduction in revenue at $2,686,968. Total expenditures at $2,431,786, leaving us $255,182 for carryover and cash on hand. So we're still ahead, but not quite a bit of a reduction.
I have just a quick question. You're spearheading an initiative to update our website and making it business friendly. What fund is that coming out of? Wouldn't that be out of your marketing and branding? It's a strategic plan initiative. You know, that one where you and Department of Finance.
The plan won't cost you anything.
Well, no, I'm just.
We haven't budgeted to do the work, and probably the work can be done. My assumption at this point is that the work can be done with the software that you're using now in your new website. We're just.
So it's just staff time.
There won't be
and
any cost associated
okay.
with it that I'm aware of, unless you want bells and whistles that we aren't thinking of.
Well, have you looked at City of Phoenix and the way that
I've probably looked at about 50 different business-friendly cities,
Okay.
both small and large, and gotten a lot of ideas. We'll bring those ideas before you. That's part of what we'll do for the strategic plan, and you can pick and choose, and I'll certainly be able to let you know at that time if there is a cost associated with those changes.
And I understand that the City of Modesto is going to start doing this. I'd like to make sure that we beat them to the punch.
There's an ulterior motive
Is
here.
because in one of the segments we're supposed to take a look at what can we do to attract businesses, make Riverbank a place where they're going to open up their new operations. That's one area. So if there are some areas that we have to correct, let's start correcting them before someone else starts correcting them. They have a new direction, and we have to make sure that our direction is complete before their new direction goes. I think that's a group, isn't it?
Yeah, one direction.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's, so we'll make that presentation as detailed as you need to know what resources may or may not be.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Or just provide us the information so we can review as you're moving along. Thank you. Any questions or comments? This is public hearing. Any questions or comments?
I have one quick one. Under the fire assessment fees, which are only $200 out there, there's a little asterisk star, and I wonder what that means, what represents.
Okay.
At this time, we do not pay fire assessment fees. It is federal property, and once it transfers, we've figured $200 in the parcels that we would get transferred. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? I bring it back to the City Council for a recommendation and/or further discussion.
Make a motion we approve the LRA item 5.5.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve LRA item 5.5 and a second.
Authority members Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tucker,
Yes.
Chair O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Item 6, new business. Item 6.1, utility rate assessment program for water and sewer rates for lower income seniors.
Mayor, members of the City Council, Maricela Garcia will present an overview of a proposal for utility rate assistance program. This program was prepared in response to a strategic planning objective that was established earlier, or late in 2015.
Good evening. As the city manager mentioned, this proposal being presented tonight is part of our strategic plan under enhanced professionalism and customer service. So our objective was to develop a proposal for a low-income senior discount for water and sewer payments and present to the City Council for action. So the proposal that's being presented tonight focuses on our senior residents, but it can be expanded to include permanently disabled residents if that's desired by the City Council. And in doing so, that would remain consistent with our current garbage rate discount, which is for our senior and permanently disabled as well. In order to gather information on developing our program, I looked at what other programs provided assistance with and who they were geared towards. The majority of the program were geared towards low-income residents in the city. They did have income guidelines that they established either using PG&E care guidelines or the federal poverty levels, or they were set by the individual agency. Income verification was required at all of those agencies, so the resident would have to submit tax returns or Social Security statements or SSI statements in the case of disability or retirement statements, etc. They were required, residents who did apply and were accepted into the program did have to recertify or reapply, some on an annual basis or some biannually. And the discounts ranged from flat dollar amounts for water, flat dollar amounts for sewer, or percentage off discounts from their billings. Some of the local programs that I noted around Stanislaus County and neighboring counties as well is the City of Ceres has a utility users tax exemption, so they don't have one that applies to their water and sewer rates, but they do have an exemption that applies to the utility users tax that they assess on electric, gas, cable, and telephone bills. The City of Modesto simply refers their customers to the assistance program that's provided by the CVOC, which is something that the City of Riverbank also takes advantage of and that we do make referrals to. The City of Escalon was the only city who actually had a discount. It was only for their sewer service, and it's $4.18 a month. And so the proposal that I have for you today is looking at a low-income senior rate assistance program. You know, sometimes it's easier to say these things in acronyms, so we can call it LISRA. If we add the disabled, then we can call it, I don't know, we'll figure out something catchy to call it so that you don't have to keep saying low-income senior and disabled assistance program. So the criteria we would be looking at is a senior who's at the age of 65 or older, so they would be Medicare eligible. The applicant must be the current account holder. The applicant must be considered extremely low income as provided by the California Housing and Community Development Department annual income limit. So this is the similar income limits that we use for our housing programs. And so we would have that remain consistent throughout the city. And the income limits that they have established for 2015 showed annual income for one household occupant of $11,950. It increases to $13,650 for a two-member household, and it increases by $1,700 from each step. So for any additional household members, we would just add an additional $1,700 to that annual income in order to determine whether they would be eligible. I did show what that monthly income translation would be. So for a one-member household, that would be a monthly income of approximately $995. For two members, it'd be about $1,137. Proof of income would be required for participation in this proposed program. We would have the applicants reapply every 2 years instead of annually. Obviously, that will help the finance staff administratively, where we would only have to worry about having to collect documentation every 2 years rather than annually. This would only apply to our residential customers. We would not have this available to any commercial customers. The program itself would be funded via the fines, forfeitures, and penalty revenue that the city currently collects on the water and sewer fund. These revenues are that 10% delinquent fee that's assessed on all past due billings, and also consists of the water reconnection fee that's collected on shutoffs. These revenues are not associated with our water and sewer rates, which is something that would be prohibited by Proposition 218. And so since these fees are separate from those rates, we would be able to appropriate them towards this program. Our program would be on a first-come, first-served basis, but dependent upon funding. New applications would be accepted once a year in June for the discount to be eligible or effective in July. And our proposal, or my proposal today, is a flat dollar discount on the base charge for our water and sewer services. So the proposal for a discount on water would be a $9 discount monthly. For sewer, it would be a $6 discount. The reason for the difference between the two is the fact that our sewer fund has been historically the one to suffer the most structural deficits, and so I didn't want to place it in a position where it might face that in the future due to not having those revenues available to offset operational cost. So the total monthly discount would be $15. And since we bill bi-monthly, that would mean a resident that is part of our program would see a discount of $30 on their bill. A pretty significant discount. And so that would be total annual savings of $180 to a resident. What a discounted billing might look like currently, if that resident participates in our low-income senior and disabled garbage rate, they're getting a minimum bill of $112 every 2 months. With this discounted billing, they'll be getting a bill of $82 every 2 months. So quite a significant change. The potential budgetary impact of this item is that, number one, we would not have the sewer and water funds available or revenues available in case we needed them for operating expenses, since you would be making a direct appropriation of these funds annually towards this program. Based on the current households that are eligible for our garbage discount rate, which is 130 households, the impact could potentially be as follows. For water, we would need approximately $14,000 to fund the discounts, and for sewer, we would need $9,400. So it would be about $23,000 annually in order to fund this program for those residents that are currently eligible for our garbage discount rate. And so tonight, our recommendation is that you provide us feedback regarding the proposed program guidelines, and that you would direct staff to prepare for the implementation of the program. The implementation would include consultation with legal counsel to make sure that we are not violating any Proposition 218 regulations. We've already been discussing this matter, and so they are prepared to assist us. Although it's not required, I would like to have a resolution to actually implement the program, just so that we have a document trail establishing the program, and that would give me the authority to appropriate the funds on an annual basis for those recurring applicants. And then we would also need a development of the application, which is fairly straightforward, and then just some staff training on what to look for when the resident brings in their documentation. I'm available for any questions.
Do you see that fines or shut-offs and for the sewer rate, for funding available for that? Is there a lot of sewer shut-offs?
There actually is a lot of sewer shutoffs, and there's quite a bit currently that we've already collected, and the penalties that would surpass the dollar amount that would be needed, based on just those initial 130 households that would be eligible already. So it is a steady revenue source for the water and sewer fund.
Now the water fines, conservation-wise, do those go to the water fund, or where do they go?
Those go to the water fund, but we keep those separately.
So we have plenty of money for each pot.
Correct.
When do you see that this may be implemented?
So I see that we would implement this as of July 1st. So we would begin to accept applications starting in May, so that would give us a 2-month period to accept the applications, review them, approve them, and then be able to implement in July. So the resident actually wouldn't see that first discount until their August or September billing, because of the way our billing cycles are.
Further questions?
I've got a question for Tom. Tom, because we're dealing with seniors, one group of society, but we're dealing with revenue, you know, the $11,950. I understand it with seniors, but what about people that say are making the $11,950, but they're not seniors? Are we discriminating in some ways there, or where are we legally?
Age discrimination applies just in the employment area.
Okay.
So for employees or applicants for employment.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to see this include the permanently disabled.
I'd be careful about that.
We can do it. I'd like to.
For example, I'm 100% disabled. So be careful about that. According to the federal government. We'll be opening
according
up
to what we're proposing, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to clarify, it would be to include those that are permanently disabled and meet the income criteria established. Okay.
There's classifications of income for disabled that is not accountable. So that's like going to Southeast Asia.
Additional legal research?
Well, you'll keep doing that, looking in that.
Correct, yes.
Right, yeah, okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Any public comment?
Question, because you've still got some big hits on water and sewer bills coming down in the next few years on that. Is this going to be brought back, or to be something in it now, or when you do the plan, or to be brought back for a look at the possible adjustments as it keeps going up, 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 up?
Every 2 years, she'll be reviewing the criteria, and then
Okay.
we'll be reviewing with her what are the demands.
Got some big hits coming up, so.
I understand that. Any further public comment? I bring it back. From what I understand, continue what you are doing in looking at the income. Try to bring it, looking at residents with permanent disabled. I would assume that there is a percentage we want to take a look at that meets this disability and income, but not the age requirement. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but if we are receiving a lot of fines and there are appropriate excess in fines that we see, that we could extend it further to, instead of saying low income for seniors, low income meeting the same requirements. It may not be appropriate right away, but you'd have to take a look at where they are in their income stream. I would just take a look at that and put it as you can cut it out if it doesn't work well, come when you bring it back to us. Any objections to that? I'll entertain that.
I agree.
Thank you. See, they did find out I have a heart.
If it's doable, I'd like to see it happen too.
If it's doable.
If it's doable.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll continue on to item 7.1, staff comments.
Yes, Mayor, members of the City Council, I would like Chief Kiley to provide an update on the situation that came before the City Council during public comment at two of the last couple of meetings from a homeless person named David Taylor. Chief Kiley is prepared to address the situation in general.
Mayor, Council, I'd like to take the opportunity to explain to you and the public basically how and why Riverbank Police Services enforces trespass. As you know, most of our trespass problem is related to legal camping along the river. Both private properties and Corps of Engineer properties are usually at the center of it. When it comes to Corps of Engineers property, they coordinate with us to go ahead and do enforcement effort. And when we do that, we try to pick up adjacent pieces of private property in that effort, so it can be one concerted effort. In order to enforce the private property, we require that a trespass authorization letter be signed and on file with the Sheriff's Department. That's basically where the private property owner is itemizing their parcel and stating that they want us to enforce trespass on their properties. It basically gives us a legal authorization to do so. When they do that, the motivation to do that is usually liability related. They don't want people starting fires on their property. They're worried about slip, trip, fall issues. They're worried about biohazard issues like used hypodermic needles that have STDs, human waste, fecal matter and things like that. As well as trash dumping. When the illegal camps are set up, quite often it results in copious amounts of trash that never gets cleaned up. So when those letters are signed and we do the enforcement sweeps, what we do is we don't just contact these people and say you have to leave now. What we do is usually 3 days in advance or earlier, we go through. We are also accompanied by Corps of Engineers personnel on their properties, but on the private properties we go through as well and days in advance explain to people that we're going to be doing mandatory enforcement, or maximum enforcement, where we're going to be enforcing the trespass laws because the property owners have authorized us to. And at that time they're told to clean up their camps and to remove any belongings that they don't want to just abandon, anything of value, take it with them, because we're going to be back and enforcing the trespass. So after we do that, we'll go back in several days, and we will, if usually we get very good compliance. In other words, the vast majority of everybody, they've already taken what they want. They usually leave a lot of refuse for us to clean up along with core. We usually fill up a couple dumpsters worth every time we do this. But things that they value, they take with them, and they're gone. They're just simply gone, so it's not an issue. Occasionally we'll see somebody still there. We'll tell them, all right, we already talked to you, you need to leave now, and they'll grab whatever they feel that they need to take with them, and they'll leave. So again, they're compliant, even if they're there when we're doing the maximum enforcement. Occasionally, and I won't even say occasionally, it's rare, but occasionally we'll have somebody that digs their heels in and says, well, I'm not leaving. So typically what we'll do when it's a misdemeanor is we'll write them a citation and tell them that they need to leave, and that we'll be back to make sure that they've left, and we'll leave it at that with a citation. So if that person again refuses to leave, then typically with misdemeanors, if you have likelihood to believe the offense is going to continue, then you will make an arrest rather than cite the next time. So what we do, if somebody is issued a citation and yet we go back in a day or two or a week or however long it is, and again we tell them to leave and they say, you can't make me, I'm not leaving, then we take them to jail. Sometimes we'll go back and they're back again and we take them to jail again. So when that happens, the district attorney gets involved, and these cases get filed, or they don't, but they do get filed from time to time. And I just want to basically tell everybody that when these cases get filed, it's not that we're not violating somebody's rights, and it was not an unlawful arrest. When these cases are dismissed, what happens is when you go to court and it gets challenged sometimes by an attorney, and they state that, well, where exactly is the property line, and you don't have a surveyor on hand to testify as an expert witness, and the property owner is not there, so you don't have the victim and you don't have an expert to testify as to where exactly is the property line, the district attorney is just going to dismiss the case because it's not worth their time, effort, and money to take it beyond that. So again, just because a case is dismissed, it doesn't mean that we're trampling upon somebody's civil rights. That's the last thing we want to do. We all take oaths to do the jobs that we do, and we take the Constitution pretty seriously. When it comes to property, people are given ample opportunity to take what they think is valuable, and if they leave the rest, and if it's a sleeping bag soiled with human excrement, we're going to throw it away. We're going to get rid of it. If it's a hazard to the public, we're going to get rid of it. And those are decisions we have to make. If it's something that's obviously of monetary value, which I'll say rarely happens because it's by virtue it's on the riverbank, it's unsecured, and you have other homeless people coming and going, you don't typically see items that are of high dollar value down there, but if there were such a thing, then it'll get booked in as found property. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we don't take these things lightly. It's a complex dynamic. We do the best we can, but ultimately our job is to enforce the law, and that's what we do. So I know that there's been some reference that we leave people in the cold and things like that. I looked up some of the dates that were related to some of the public comment recently, and one of those days was a 104-degree day in September, so I don't think hypothermia was going to be an issue. But in any event, if you have any questions, I'm happy to ask or answer whatever you have. But
I don't have questions. I do commend the methodology used in dealing with those homeless and trespassing. It is not one that we go in with any sizable force at all. We go in there with more of a humane treatment to move them along to protect the property values, not the property, but the properties that has been designated by either private or public entities. If that individual does come back again, the first public comment I would like you to do is restate some of those facts. So we can't comment on public comments. We can't take action on public comments. But if you should make the public comment first, it lessens the impact from the individual. That's just my recommendation. You're not under any obligation to do so.
Okay. One more thing I'll add. When we make these contacts, we hand out information on all the different social services offered in the county, hoping that people will take advantage of that information. And it's ultimately it's their decision whether they're going to seize upon it or not. But it's another effort that we make. So.
Mayor, members of the City Council, I'd also like to respond to the question that was raised by Fast Eddie during public comment earlier this evening, and that is in regards to the cost of getting a booth at the farmers market. The Chamber of Commerce runs that market, and they set the fees associated with the booths and other activities there. And so I would encourage Fast Eddie to speak to Garnett Martin, or Darlene Barber Martinez in her capacity as one of the Chamber of Commerce members. So do let him know that's something that's beyond the control of the city at this time. And then finally, I'm sure the mayor is going to speak to this as well, because he will be the main attraction at the 2016 State of the City Address tomorrow night at the Galaxy Theater starting at 6 p.m. We certainly invite everybody to come out and participate in their community by supporting the mayor and the city council and the state of the city. There will be refreshments at that event. It'll also give a chance to see the Galaxy Theater as it's undergoing expansion in the anticipation of IMAX opening in late March of 2016.
Thank you. Councilmember Campbell, please.
Just a reminder, even though the weather is getting warmer and you'll be tempted, follow the regulations for conserving water in the community.
Councilmember Barbara Martinez, please.
Well, thank you for stealing my one and only thunder tonight.
You're welcome.
Well, happy spring, everyone. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Tucker.
I just wanted to discuss a matter briefly this evening, and Ms. Anderson and I have spoken about this, so she's aware that I'm going to bring it up. With the warmer weather, my family, we've had occasion to be out in our backyard in the evening after dark, and we've observed a drone flying overhead, flying over our vicinity, our neighborhood, and actually darting around and then dropping low. And it's hard to tell what they're doing, but I can speak to what they're doing over my home, which is they dropped right over my husband's head and hovered there for a while. It definitely feels a little creepy, as a violation of privacy for sure. So I'd like the staff to look into this a little bit and maybe working with the chief and seeing what other cities are doing. I know that they have to register, owners of the drones have to register them with the FAA, but that certainly doesn't address any privacy concerns that we may have. So I've asked that we look into this and see if there's something that can be done to control this situation.
Don't they have to be registered if they are a certain weight and size?
Yes.
They're larger than, I don't know how large your drone is, but.
I thought there were rules too about flying in certain areas and whatnot too. That they're.
The FAA has not come up with complete.
This is a new area.
It is.
So.
Well, thank you for that input. I guess we have another task to do, and I would recommend that you keep that in mind in April 4th, is it, when we do our 5th, when we do the strategic planning. I have two short comments. As everyone noticed, that we have a lot of requirements coming down from the state, and they're going to keep continuing. They're going to be unfunded mandates. They're going to be requirements to do certain items such as the housing element in a new set of rules, which is going to affect the way that we will be doing business. Unfortunately, we don't control the state. I don't think anyone does. So we have to be very aware, and that's what our legal team is doing. The other thing I'd like to comment on, but it's not our action, it is the school board's action, but it has been brought up here several times about student safety at bus crossings. I have seen in other cities where the bus driver gets out, holds up a sign to stop. Prior to any crossing, they secure it and they walk across. Now, I believe that we're capable of doing that too. And you can see in the city of Riverbank, one school district does it, that's to our south, and another school district does not. So if we could contact the school districts and ask them, especially on Roselle, that the bus drivers ensure the safety. Now, I noticed that we have had a lot of police presence there the last 4 years, but there has been comments that there's never been a police officer there, but I have seen them. So if we could contact the unified school districts and get that going. And we continue on with closed session, item 8, 8.1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to subdivision Bravo of Government Code 54956.91, potential case. Recommendation, it is recommended that the City Council LRA Board provide direction to staff. Is there anyone who wishing to comment on item 8 prior to us going into closed session? With no public comments or no inputs, we are now in closed session. City Council meeting is now in session. Report out from closed session, item 9.1, report on closed session, item 8.1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. Direction has been provided to staff. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Council.